This podcast was produced by Sean Weston Media. There are hundreds and thousands of different tools that you can use as a communicator. What do you like? What do you use?
I like to use a good strong blanket and a good fire. Smoke signals.
Some hot chocolate.
Oh, hot chocolate. I didn't think of the accessorising the smoke signals with hot chocolate. I like it. Oh, I've used all sorts of tools. I think I am that person who is guilty of, I found a great tool and then asked me again in 2 weeks and I've moved on to the next tool.
Yeah, you definitely are that person. You're the sort of person who gets you to sign up for something because it's the best damn thing you've ever used. And a couple of days later, it's been replaced.
Yeah, and you know me well enough that if I'm still using something a few months on, it means
it's a good one.
It's a really good one, and I'm stuck with it. And Notion is one of those for me at the moment. Notion is quite a youngish company.
So for our listeners who don't know, what is Notion?
Notion is one of those all-in-one collaborative tools, but it works different than a lot of the similar sounding tools because you're in control of what you want to actually build. You build your own company wiki, essentially. And then you can share pages, make pages private, and have...
And it has this kind of nice basic look to it, doesn't it?
Yes,
it's not,
minimalist.
It's not super glamorous. I think we see a lot of tools out that are marketed to communicators, and they look beautiful. They look great, and you go in and use them, and there's nothing behind it.
Or it's clunky, or it takes you 5 clicks to get to something.
Absolutely.
Whereas Notion, you can actually favourite click, and there it is. Bang. I love it. But then there are also lots of established tools, aren't there, such as, well, you have a lot of experience with Microsoft, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, often when you work in corporate organisations, maybe some of that is taken away from you, this choice is a little bit taken away as you have to use, say, Microsoft or something like that. At the moment, certainly we use a lot more Teams, is obviously like the de facto Microsoft product where kind of is your collaborative space, brings people. It's replaced Skype, it's replaced Yammer to an extent, I guess, as a broader tool.
I haven't heard the word Yammer in ages.
Yeah, it's still there, isn't it? And I believe there's a lot of updates coming to it. But mainly, I guess, because people aren't using it as much.
Is that still owned by Microsoft?
Yeah, it's all the same thing. It's all part of Office 365. So we're all becoming more savvy. We're all working online. We're all using the online versions of Word and PowerPoint and even your Nemesis Excel. They're all there, and they're much better than they ever were. They're certainly learning from Google Docs and from Apple.
Yeah.
They're getting better.
Well, Google is recently changed its name as well. It's Google Workspace now. It used to be G Suite, and it's a really clever, successful collaboration.
And it's free.
And it's free. You do have to pay to a certain level, enterprise. So if you're running a company, you do have to pay for it then. But it's so low cost, actually. Google don't charge a lot for their services. They can be incredibly complicated from an admin point of view, but the idea is that you make it easy. But yes, you're right, they've got the spreadsheet, they've got the word processor, they've got working on on a page together, and the whole cloud computing is where everyone should be working. And
if you're not, it must be tough right now, isn't it?
Really tough. It's got to be tough. But I think people still keep things to themselves and keep them on their own hard drive, sometimes without knowing that that's what they've done. They think everyone can see it, but they can't. And then we've got things like Slack, which I think is an excellent bit of software. Did you know that Microsoft tried to buy Slack a few years ago?
Oh, really? And they got shut down?
No, instead created Teams, because Teams is their version of Slack. Because Slack can do all of those things. Slack has had...
Yeah. I feel like Teams was definitely put out there quickly and they're working around the clock to try and improve it. But there's still these moments where you're on a call with lots of people and you're presenting, but once you present, you can't then see any of the hands up or the questions being asked,
right,
which is so frustrating for anyone. So you often hear this, okay, I'm going to present now. Please tell me if there's any questions because I won't be able to see it. There's little clunky things behind there that haven't been worked through that maybe work better on Slack.
Yeah, well, Slack has also just been bought by Salesforce.
Oh,
So it's about to take on Microsoft properly,
well, that'd be really interesting.
because a lot of companies use Salesforce.
They do.
And so if Slack is integrated, that's a proper competitor now to Microsoft Teams.
What about other things then? What other good little tools are out there? What about videos, video editing?
Well, video editing is a good one, because you don't have to be complicated. There is that thing, where, I'm going to give you an example that's slightly different. That a year ago, I knew of someone who said, right, I'm going to start my own podcast. And they went on social media and showed, here's all the microphones I've bought, here's my studio setup. And they'd bought soundboards. Yep. They lived in a lovely little apartment, and they created their own home studio, and they'd spent a small fortune on it. Do you know they haven't released the podcast yet?
Well,
It's a small anecdote to say that even companies do that. Companies throw thousands of pounds at
great equipment.
great equipment or the idea of something. We need this consultant to come in. Let's pay the consultant to come in to tell us to use this £100,000 worth of software, when actually you can use iMovie to edit software.
Absolutely. And I think we've got to get to a point where I think certainly in internal comms, there's this idea of these very super glossy corporate videos that were coming out, to match maybe how videos are shared externally. But people aren't watching or engaging with them. If something's over a few minutes long, you're unlikely to get people to watch it.
Because it's not about the editing, it's about the story.
It's about the story, it's about what people are saying. So, but with something like iMovie, which is a free piece of software on a Mac, you can still make something look really professional in minutes.
I do think, though, that there needs to be more understanding from people in a business what helps to make a video better looking. A basic sense of lighting, a good microphone.
Yeah, some simple guidance. If you can record your voice using a mic like we're using today, it's going to be much better than picking it up on the phone and thinking about the room that you film in.
Yeah.
Don't film directly into the light. Don't film on a noisy street, next to an air conditioner, all those sort of things. It's kind of tips, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's quite a useful thing that perhaps communications teams can help with as well.
Here's some guidelines. If you're on video this week, here are our video guidelines, the top 5 things you need to do. Turn off your phone, have good light, have a small room.
And we're both Mac devotees, and we both use iPads. What sort of tools are you using on there?
Well, you can use, I'm recording, I edit the podcast on iPad. So many people are using their big Mac to do it, and GarageBand and all these sorts of things, which are great. But you can use your iPad to do it really quickly. And then making little jingles that you might have for your podcast or your video, you can do all that with an iPad.
You introduced me to GoodNotes.
GoodNotes is cracking. If you've got an Apple Pencil.
Yep.
And GoodNotes is that, what's that fancy brand of notepad?
Moleskine?
Moleskine. Well, how do you say it? Do you remember when we went to Copenhagen?
Yeah.
And we found out how to say it.
It's left my memory.
Moleskine. It's not that. I do apologise to any Scandinavian. Even though I am 42% Scandinavian, I still cannot say it. But yeah, GoodNotes is your version of that, except you can move your handwriting around the page, and you can...
It's like having your notepad back, and you feel like those bits of information are going into your head a little bit better because you're writing them down. But you can just go back and cross it out and delete it and remove that page from your pad. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic.
Well, to wrap this episode up then, what we might say to people pre-Christmas is don't forget the app in your Christmas gift ideas. You can gift an app to somebody.
Yeah, you absolutely can, and they're obviously pretty cheap, aren't they, apps? But it's nice you can send them to anybody. So if you've not seen somebody for a long time, it's a nice little gift to help them be a bit more productive in 2021.
I might be sending you something.
I look forward to it.